Today, a popular catchphrase is, "It's true for you, but not for me." It's often a response given by people who disagree with what someone else believes. The idea is that it really doesn't matter what your beliefs are, as long as you're sincere in those beliefs. But is being sincere in your beliefs enough? Well, firstly, you can be sincere and just plain wrong. Very few people believe that the Holocaust was a good thing, but Hitler was very sincere in what he was doing. Secondly, you can be sincere and ignore reality. Recently, Rachel Dolezal, a civil rights activist, was accused by her parents of falsely claiming to be black when in fact she was white. A similar case of a young Norwegian woman was also widely reported. Claiming to have the sensory powers of a cat, she said she'd been born in the wrong species, but the reality was she was a human. If tomorrow I sincerely believe that I'm a heart surgeon, would you allow me or to operate on you or anyone else you know? Probably not. The reality is you need a trained heart surgeon. Now, this belief may seem very tolerant, but it's making a truth claim that there is no truth, which is itself a truth claim. All by itself, being sincere isn't enough. Why? Because there is such a thing as truth, and we cannot live in this world without it. Someone may say there is no truth, but when they travel calmly at 30,000 feet on a plane, it is the unchangeable truth of aerodynamics that is keeping them in the air. Every major belief and religion makes a different and contradictory truth claim. They can't all be true. For example, Islam says that Jesus was not crucified. Christianity says he was. Only one of us can be right. Judaism says Jesus was not the Messiah. Christianity says he was. Only one of us can be right. Hinduism says God has often been incarnate or taken on flesh. Christianity says God was incarnate only in Jesus. We cannot both be right. Atheism says there's no ultimate meaning or purpose to our lives. Christianity says ultimate meaning and purpose are found in a relationship with Jesus. Buddhism says that the world's miseries will end when we do what is right. Christianity says we cannot do what is right. That's why we need Jesus. It's possible to be full of sincere worship and worship the wrong God. That's the reason for the first commandment. To have a sincerely misguided belief in the wrong thing or in the wrong person will not save you. The most important aspect of our faith is not how hard we believe, but in who we believe. Having redeemed or rescued his people from slavery in Egypt, God then guides them through the wilderness and brings them to Mount Sinai to instruct them in his ways. In Exodus 19:4-6, God says he chose Israel to be his treasured possession, a kingdom of priests to represent God to the world. God calls his people to be different from the nations by the way they live, so that other nations would see how great God is and come to praise his name. And it's through observing the Ten Commandments that they can worship the true God the right way and make his name great. All of the other laws given to Israel and to Christians are applications and extensions of the Ten Commandments. Our Western world has built its understanding of right and wrong from these laws, but do you know them? A recent study found that 14% of all Americans could name the Ten Commandments. By comparison, a quarter of all Americans can name 7 ingredients in a Big Mac. In other words, more people know that a Big Mac has 2 all-beef patties than know that you shall not murder is one of the 10 commandments. The 10 commandments are foundational for knowing the true God and knowing how to worship him rightly. If God made us, then surely he must want us to know who he is. Surely he would make himself clear so we can worship him and not some false god, and that's the purpose of the first commandment. The first commandment teaches us that God alone saves. Exodus 20:1-3 says, "And God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt and out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me." To have no other gods means to worship no other God but the Lord. Back when Exodus was written, people worshipped many gods. To say you worship God wasn't controversial, but what was controversial was, and what set Israelites apart from the other nations, was that their God demanded to be worshipped alone, as the only God, to the exclusion of all others. This is known as monotheism, which is the belief that there is only one true God. No other God should be worshipped because in reality there are no other gods. This claim is still controversial today. Right now, countries like China and North Korea Communist countries making up over 1 billion people are communist and believe that there is no God. In fact, in such countries, you can be imprisoned, tortured, or killed for having this belief. Right now in China, they're removing crucifixes from churches and then instead hanging portraits of the president, Xi Jinping. The Ten Commandments have been painted over with quotes from the president, and Bibles are being rewritten with the president's name, replacing God's name in Genesis as the author of creation. How do we know there is only one God? Because he alone saved the Israelites from their slavery through plagues, miracles, and great acts of deliverance that only God could do. When God says, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, in verse 2, he is reminding them of the staff, the plagues, the Red Sea. He's saying to them, why would you trust any other so-called God? Why would you trust yourself? You didn't escape Egypt by your own smartness or because of Pharaoh's great kindness. I put you on eagle's wings. I defeated mighty Egypt. You can trust me. And this applies equally today for those who trust in Jesus. God saved those who trust in Jesus through defeating sin and death. And God has given evidence of this to all people by raising Jesus from the grave, which is the proof that Jesus' mission to save from sin and death was accomplished. Only the true God could do this, because only God saved. So put God first. Because God saves, God is worthy of our loyalty. This means we should put God before other gods and before even the governing rulers of the country or our families. This is why the first commandment is so controversial in places like China and North Korea, because it makes a claim to loyalty above the state in places where the state demands absolute obedience. The God who came down on Mount Sinai and worship me alone is the same God that said over 1,000 years later on a different mountain, this is my beloved son, listen to him. The first commandment means putting Jesus first. He is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature, Hebrews 1:3. He is the one before whom every knee will bow in worship, Philippians 2:10-11. If you don't know Jesus, then you don't know God, and you will not worship God rightly. We are not worshiping the one true God unless we are worshiping Jesus. So to ignore God and to ignore Jesus by living for yourself places you under the judgment of God. If you don't yet trust Jesus, then you begin to put God first by trusting Jesus and making him your greatest treasure. If you do trust Jesus, then putting God first means hearing from him and growing a relationship with him. That comes first. It means making Spark on Sundays your number one priority and reading his word your number one priority each day. It means choosing to stand up God and for other Christians and for what the Bible says at school, even if it makes you unpopular. To God, to put God first means to make God your first thought, to make God's priorities your priorities, to be willing to sacrifice other things for God, to love him above all things. When Jesus was asked, what is the greatest commandment? He refers back to Deuteronomy 6 and says, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. If we are to love God first, then it means we need to avoid anything that would steal your love from God. The fault with God's people has always been trying to have a little bit of God and a little bit of other gods or idols. An idol is a life-ruling desire other than the glory of God. An idol, according to Tim Keller, is anything more important to you than God, anything that absorbs your heart and imagination more than God, anything you seek to give you what only God can give you. Idolatry is a misdirection of loyalty and robs God of his glory. And in response, God is very angry. An idol is something you trust, love, or serve more than God. Imagine you're dating someone and you were to say, I want to introduce someone to you who's very special to me. Don't get me wrong, you're also very special to me. But I've met someone else. She is lovely, and I'm going to spend time with her. And also a lot of time with you. I just want to let you know that some nights I'm going to be with her instead. I think you two will get along just fine. You'll be great friends. You both mean so much to me. Now, what would your boyfriend or girlfriend say in this situation? That's great, babe. I'm honored that I can still be part of your life. Hardly. Your girlfriend or boyfriend would say, it's me or them, make up your mind. And if your boyfriend or girlfriend would say that with a lot of passion, And anger, would anyone think they're being cruel, proud, unfair, or intolerant? No, we would say that they're just being the sort of boyfriend or girlfriend they ought to be. She has every right to be jealous. We'd be concerned if she wasn't angry. And so it is with God. God often describes himself as a groom and his people as a bride who has been unfaithful to him. God cannot tolerate anyone or anything that would put God in second place. God is the creator and redeemer, and he alone deserves our love. Love is at the very heart of the first commandment. If we truly love God, we will love no one else and nothing else like we love God. Now, though most of us aren't tempted to bow down before trees and statues, the same forces at work in the ancient world that made idolatry attractive are still with us today. One of the best summaries of this attraction of idolatry comes from the Old Testament scholar Doug Stewart. In his Exodus commentary, he lists 9 reasons the Israelites were so drawn to idolatry. It was guaranteed. If they did the right prayer, God gave them what they wanted. 2, it was selfish. If you did what God wanted, he gave you what you wanted. 3, it was easy. It didn't matter what you did most of the time. All you had to do was show up and present a drink or dead animal. 4, it was convenient. Ancient worship was like going to your local McDonald's. There were many places you could go and take care of your religious obligations. 5, it was normal. Everyone else, though their gods were different and did different things, did religion the same way. 6, it was logical. It made sense that there were many gods and goddesses, each one specializing in a different area of blessing or area of the world. 7, it was pleasing to the senses. The statues people made were very attractive and impressive. It was much easier to believe in something you could see. And 8, it was indulgent. Idolatry was an occasion for eating the best food and drinking the best wine. Our idols today look different, but it's those same idols of ease and convenience that we desire thousands of years later. Here are some questions to help you check who is first in your heart. Who do you praise? You may compliment your friends or family, but who receives your highest praise? Whom do you count on or trust? Sure, God works through means such as doctors and insurance companies and prescription medicine, but when you're really in need, who do you know will always come through? Thirdly, who do you call on or rely on? Where do you look for answers? Where do you turn for purpose and joy? Is it food or work, TV or phone, your friends, or the God of the universe? Lastly, who do you thank? Where do your good days come from? Who made the trees and the stars? Who gave you every good thing you have? Is being sincere in your beliefs enough? You can be sincere and just plain wrong. You can be sincere and ignore reality. It's possible to be sincere and worship the wrong God, but God has revealed himself in Jesus as the one true God who has saved us through Jesus, and he is worthy of our praise and thanks. We have so much to thank God for. He hasn't withheld any good gift from us, but has saved us freely through his Son. So let's thank him and put him first this week.